I'm realizing that now I've almost become addicted to being uncomfortable. Being uncomfortable has become my comfort zone in a weird way, because if I have the real pressures of whatever it is in life, but now I'm starting to question that, because I'm realizing that that may not be sustaining.
The Great Failure. In Search of Unlearning with James Jean and Jun Cha. As an artist, your process defines you. It's what enables you to create consistent and at times recognizable work. This path can lead to a successful career, but not without stirring up an artist's own internal struggles. James Jean and Jun Cha are two artists at different points of their career. Jun started tattooing as a teenager. His first experience was a disaster. The tattoo gun made of salvaged materials blew up midway through the session. But Jun's come a long way from that initial experience. A quick look at his Instagram features a close connection with the likes of 2 Chainz, Fear of God's Jerry Lorenzo, and Rob Garcia of En Noir. The world over has come to respect Jun's beautiful, hyper-realistic work. It's a waitlist of more than 3 years just to get a tattoo from him. Likewise, James, the accomplished fine artist and illustrator, has enjoyed a fruitful career. His work carries a level of detail and intricacy that makes it hard to miss. It's a common occurrence for his work to sell out shortly after release. As the two connect to discuss about their careers, Jun is coming into his own as a successful tattoo artist, but he craves more. More creative freedom, more progression, and more challenge. But to get there will take some careful thinking. Here's where James comes into the picture. His fair share of ups and downs has imparted valuable wisdom and insight. He's been around long enough to understand artist growth. This growth for many artists comes under the notion of unlearning. As artists, you're entered into a state of expectation. Expectation drives the social media likes, it drives commercial success. But artists such as Jun or James have realized, greatness comes on the back of this sense of unlearning. It's considering the fundamentals that allowed you to achieve and breaking it all down. It's always a risky move, changing a recipe for success. The uncomfortable grind is what made Jun comfortable. This worked early on in his career. Jun was so plugged in, he often had little time to reflect. But he started to question this philosophy and its sustainability. As you grow as an artist and you gain traction, progression can falter. James suggests that the process brings success and scalability. But a double-edged sword appears. Some artists grow disenchanted with the very work that created their success.
For each piece, at this point, it seems like there is a certain standard way of working or process to kind of bring it to life. But
that you've developed.
That I've developed. But I also hate repeating myself.
Right.
I don't want to churn out the same imagery over and over again.
Right.
Which I see that it's sort of what you have to do as an artist, as a contemporary artist.
Right.
A lot of artists are very consistent with what they do, with their body of work. It's easily understandable when you see their work. Like, you recognize that it's that artist. It's that's a Warhol.
Especially if it works, right?
Yeah.
When a unique art form becomes a commodity, internal questions arise. Jun wonders, how can you prevent yourself from being an artist of circumstance?
Forget the fact for a second that, let's pretend that, obviously there's kids, there's a family, that there's other people that might be responsible for, aside from the life things that come with it. It's just, strictly on the creative side, how do you move past that?
Well, I'm still trying to figure that out.
Right.
At this stage.
That's the question.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's definitely things I could do to be more commercially successful, but I always kind of fight against that. I feel like it's disingenuous. Yeah, I always want to create something that's different, new.
That's not necessarily determined by your consumer or your likes on Instagram or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
James Jean's illustrative work has come to define him. It represents a big part of his identity. James shares his own experiences of reducing his involvement in illustration.
You're 26, right?
Right.
So I think when I was your age, working long hours, did a complete 180 and stopped doing all that and just focused only on my painting and on my fine art career. And that actually kind of worked against me.
How long did that last?
James's first successful solo show took place in 2008. It was a bridge between his illustrations and his more involved fine art. The work was both accessible and identifiable, but with a catch.
It was still accessible. The imagery was recognizable. The fans of my work who came to the show, they could still appreciate what I was doing. But then shortly after the show, I wanted to destroy everything. I wanted to burn it all down and create a whole new body of work.
June tries to draw out an answer from James.
Because that wasn't real.
Well,
or there was
I don't
something.
know.
What was that void that initially said that you wanted to say? Like the commercial work that you were doing, but inside you wanted to be this fine artist. What was that? What was driving?
Well, I felt like it was all too easy. Yeah, it wasn't pushing me in a more unexpected and more creative direction.
While James had wanted to leave that work behind, almost a decade later he's returned to that very style.
That work people seem to really respond to that type of work.
Because that's James Jean. That's what people. That's what people buy
what they
for.
expect.
That's what they want.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
but
that's what gets the most likes on
social media, on Instagram, right? But the real James Jean is that guy that wanted to push.
James's period of disinterest in his most popular work did allow for experimentation. He pursued other creative mediums, yet settled right back where he started. Coming full circle made him realize that being extreme was no longer sustainable.
I don't know what's real and what's not at this point. So that's why I'm kind of in the middle right now. So when I was around your age, I was
working.
I was extreme. I was like black or white. So yeah, and then I went off in different directions. I started doing objects, and I made jewelry. You grew up, and then I put all that behind me now. I quit all of that. Now I'm just focusing solely on what I was doing in the very beginning. So it's almost come full circle.
Full circle back.
Yeah.
Commissions can be physically and mentally taxing. Having a private space to create personal work can be a creative recharge.
So I kind of bounce back and forth. So when I'm working on the piece for the client, but when I take a break, when I'm say flying across the ocean, those 10, 12 hours I'll spend working on something just purely for myself.
Regardless of achievement, June and James share a common perspective. Success to them doesn't exist. Success has the ability to negatively impact their work.
What is success? I feel like I'm never content with where I'm at, so I think that sort of keeps me going and exploring. I don't know if I've ever felt a great success.
Yeah, I don't think I have had that experience either. I think for a long time it's like you go on this process almost like searching for that. But I think at this point I'm at a place where maybe the searching is the problem in the first place. So it's like you're trying to arrive at a place where you think that you did it or did something or something is there's closure to it. I think that's what I've been kind of questioning, because I don't think that's what I've been experiencing with work and kind of learning and going through all this stuff. Or the older I'm getting, the more I'm doing, the more I'm realizing that I don't know a damn thing.
The more your work gets out there, the more famous you get, the more of a fraud I feel like inside sometimes. Right, yeah, right. It messes with your head a little bit.
Deep down, there's a paradox. Popularity and success intensify negative emotions.
An appetite for the next thing, a feeling of inadequacy, of being a fraud, a little bit of self-loathing, of feeling undeserving of what's happened. But to me, that's just my normal state.
Conversation moves up to James's studio, who at the time had a space in the same building as June. For June, his own progression goes under the microscope. His current body of work is recognizable and in high demand. But the work isn't fulfilling. The search for him has been ongoing.
It's like a pattern I think I've been going through. It's like you go through this searching, this cycle of trying to find out what it is, and you realize it was probably staring in front of you the whole time.
What is needed is for June to find his bearings.
I think what I was trying to get at before is the searching was the problem. You're kind of trying to get to a place where chasing something. I mean, you don't feel, it doesn't seem like you still have that.
You're at a precipice right now, right? Because you are,
I see
you
the
have
valley.
this, I don't know. I mean, you know, you seem very established at the moment.
James provides some wisdom on artistic identity. His foundation and interest in art was broad. While focus was meant to refine his identity, having few limitations in his medium opened up the doors.
I loved working on my sketchbook. I loved working from the figure. I did digital work. I did traditional work. I never could find that one thing that I did, but that ended up being my signature in a way. You know, I kind of took everything that we learned in school, unraveled all of that, and then those different strands ended up becoming what I was known for.
Right, that's the unlearning part, right?
Yeah.
Because it happened kind of, in a sense, unconsciously. Because you're just,
Yeah.
I mean, you're aware of it, but you're not really
Yeah, I feel like
working to gun for a style, right? Because you were
Right.
just trying to find a way.
Yeah.
So it, like the like abandoning of the style in itself almost became your the sketchbook, the you, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, my sketchbooks kind of got more mileage than my actual work in the beginning. And my sketchbooks were filled with all sorts of different things, you know, from life studies to finished pieces, you know, textural explorations, journal entries.
James's own introspection meant embracing artistic diversity. But something was looming, something that has served as an uncontrollable aid in rebirth: failure. James experienced this through divorce and pushed him into hiding.
You know, I've had a great failure in my life maybe 4 years ago now, and I'm slowly making my way out of it. Maybe you are on your way towards a great fall, maybe a catastrophe, who knows? And then it almost seems like everyone
Wants that.
everyone almost has to go through that
Right.
in a way. Like it's inevitable. You know, we try our hardest to kind of just always stay on the path to success. But from, I guess, my own personal experience and from, you know, other people I know that are kind of in the same age, yeah, they've always experienced that. At this point, you are consciously making some decisions that could alter the course of your career. I mean, you could just keep doing your tattoos forever, right?
And just shut up.
Yeah, you've
just
got
shut
a
up.
waiting
Just-
list for, you know, eons right now.
Success is something you want to bottle and distill. Earlier in his career, James began to make more conscious decisions. Only, things didn't work out as planned. It made him question his free will and actual control.
And I felt like when I was around your age at that point, I reached a stage where I was able to make more conscious decisions about my career, whereas up to that point, I was kind of improvising.
Right.
You know, I
Doing
had
as
no
you
idea
go.
what I was doing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
projects were just coming my way. I had very little control.
Right.
But then when I started to have more conscious control over what I was doing, that's when things kind of started falling apart, which I think is interesting. You know, it's like, how much free will do you actually have over your career, over your art? It's like, I'm at the level of creating a picture. How much free will do you have? How much can you control when you're making a painting? It's a lot of it is subconscious. You know, there's always a disconnect between your head and your hands.
The formula you learned in art school and academia doesn't always hold true in the real world. You recognize the disconnections, and when possible, you roll with them.
Once you're out of that mode, out of the academic mode, you want to learn how to, I guess, embrace the mistakes, embrace the accidents, embrace the inevitable.
It comes across as a somber thought.
I'm questioning whether that seeking is even correct in the first place. So maybe that's
Right.
also part of the unlearning thing that I gotta do. Because I get very suspicious when things are going very good.
It's an interesting way of looking at things. Perfection is not desirable.
I think a part of me is almost like anticipating something.
Or you're subconsciously destroy it.
Right.
Sabotage yourself.
Maybe, right?
Self-sabotage.
And there's something in that. Why is that?
I felt like in order to get out of my rut or, you know, the situation I was in, I had to self-sabotage.
Right. There's something to be said when you start like decomposing what you built up.
Right.
Right. The accumulation of what you learned.
Yeah.
On both like a technical level or just a career level. Right.
Yeah. And even when I'm painting, when the painting goes too well, it becomes less interesting. So it always comes to a point where I have to put like a wash or some kind of destructive element on the painting.
Right.
And that alters the course of the painting, or it makes me see something different. So,
right.
I mean, you can't do that with
tattooing.
Tattoo.
That's what I was just about to say, because like that's also the thing, part of the thing that maybe I'm trying to understand or trying to experience more.
But imperfection sometimes requires you to force your own hand. While experience allows you to improve your craft, finding your way requires you to unpack what you've learned. The realization begins to surface for James in June. Self-destruction is the first step towards rebuilding.
That could be a part of it.
The self-sabotage.
Right.
Yeah, I think
self-destruct.
Self-destruction, yeah, that definitely is part of it.
Because after that process is over, then there's a realization there.
Yeah.
Right? There's a next step.
And there's the rebuilding, and this is almost like therapy right now. Trying to
both of us.
Right.
Unlearning requires one to recognize complacency. James has taken a stance against the life of his work after it's unveiled. It takes on a life of its own.
Because it involves, right, that whole self-sabotage, your identity, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Kind of letting go of that. You always mention that you're not involved in the same sense as before.
I'm sort of just, I guess, a vessel for the work.
Once it hits the internet, James is unplugged and unconcerned with its perception. He aims to move on to the next one, rather than dwell and focus on the existing work at hand.
Once the work is done, it does take on a life of its own. People see it, the image travels across the internet and it gets shared. And yeah, my hands are kind of away from it, and whatever accolades or acclaim that the work gets, it's purely on its own merits.
June was often driven internally to find and solve the problem. There wasn't an opportunity for him to stand back and assess the situation, but he recognized it to allow moments of randomness, of serendipity.
This has been obsessing me for a while now. It took me a long time to understand that, I gotta constantly check myself in terms of that, so I can understand from the outside of, the thing about understanding that seeking is the problem in the first place.
Right.
Being just
Just in the moment.
Yeah, because for a long time I had not even the ability to step out and look at it that way. Yeah. Because I was in the mode of hunting and searching and going and getting and trying to work your ass off and build a body of work, and there's this, there's that. There's always that struggle. There's always a constant cycle of that opposition that you talked about. So I think the place that you're describing is a little bit more whole, a little bit more unified, because after that self-decomposing...
It's kind of a place beyond free will.
But not in the sense, I think, of you're enslaved. It's almost like beyond free will, but you're more in tune with what is instead of trying to condition it a certain way.
When you're early into your career, you seek identity. You seek to control every move to shape the perception around you.
When you're younger, you want to be perceived a certain way.
Yeah. You care about things like that. Right?
Personal branding.
Right, all that stuff.
I'm starting to let go. I don't know if I've completely let go. Of course, you have to carefully curate what you put out there and
all that stuff, yeah.
But there were certain aspects to what I was doing that I really hated.
In a certain way.
Right, exactly. So right now, I've learned to not self-conscious about that.
Right, to not care.
To not care as much.
James never had the same thoughts as June. He attained a level of success which allowed him to pivot as an artist. Destructive factors unwillfully pushed James in a certain direction. June now has James's case study to consider.
I was at, your stage. I didn't have this conversation with anyone. It never came up.
Were you thinking about any of this?
No, because I'd gone to a point where, okay, I can step back. I had the freedom to step back, to take a look at everything I'd done, and because I wanted to quit illustration, and I wanted to do fine art, and I wanted to be perceived a certain way, I wanted to do a certain thing, and I wanted to remove myself from everything I'd done before. I couldn't anticipate all the other factors that were conspiring against me. And it all kind of like came to a head where I had to disappear for a couple of years. So right now, you know, you have the benefit of, I guess, maybe
thinking about this,
about my experience. Like,
right.
What do you think? Are you gonna, like, say, abandon tattooing and just do your fine art?
The lack of caring was paramount for James to help find a new sense of being. Not trying to control the world around him left James in a better place.
You went full circle, right? You weren't thinking about this, but you went and you made that conscious decision. You got into this whole thing, and now you're here
now
again.
I'm back to kind of where I started, but I care less.
Right.
No.
But there's a selflessness to it that wasn't there in the first place, and I think that's what's engaged me.
Jun has always wanted to pursue more than just tattooing. But is it possible to relinquish control of what has gotten him to where he is today? Or will that unforeseen and uncontrollable failure guide him?
I believe there's a place in the middle, just like you're saying. I think I'm coming to terms with that middle ground in the sense of I don't necessarily have to say abandon tattooing and just go to fine art or whatever, vice versa. There's a place in there that isn't black and white, kind of what you're talking about.
Unlike your wardrobe.
Unlike my wardrobe and my studio.
In the event of a lack of control, what solutions exist?
I don't think there's one failure. I don't think it's a singular moment that like happens and then you're enlightened all of a sudden. I'm coming to accept that the nature of things is a constant change.
You know, the fact that I want to be a serious artist and a serious painter, but I need to embrace the fact that maybe I'll never be someone like that.
Because maybe that isn't you.
Yeah, maybe it isn't me, and I should just enjoy making the work so many other people seem to enjoy. So.
Same thing, I think, with me, right? Maybe it's right in front of us.